All right. Welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for listening. This is Gridiron 360. Got Dave with me.
And he's choking. He's choking on the great slate of NFL games in the playoffs to come.
That's right. As we dive in to the NFL Week 12 preview, I'm Bill. Let's dive right in. Let's get right into it.
All right.
Yeah. Thursday night football. We're going to touch on, as Dave said, we're going to touch on the games of the week we find are most important, preview those, and then slide right into some conversation about the playoffs. So we'll start with Thursday night football as the Indianapolis Colts travel to Houston to take on Deshaun Watson and Texans. Both teams are 6-4 after the Colts won last week and the Texans lost in embarrassing fashion, mind you. The Texans are coming home after being in London and then going on the road to Baltimore. So now they finally get back home. Deshaun Watson, not a great performance. Totally expect my man to bounce back. But because of that loss and the Colts winning, they're tied at 6-4. And a few weeks back, they had played one of their two divisional matchups, these two teams, in Indy, and in which Indianapolis won the game. It was 30-23. Thursday night football, we know it's typically a slower game, but you've got, two teams here, especially on the Texans side with a high-powered offense. On the Colts side, looks like Marlon Mack, the running back, will be gone, but Brissett's back in the fold. Texans' defense is porous. They can, grind you out and put points on the board. This is an important one for both teams, as coming out of this will it just mean supremacy at the top of the AFC South. But really, moving forward, if the Colts win this, they've got both of the divisional matchups. I'm looking at the Colts' schedule, not half bad the rest of the way. Looking like they'll have a little bit of the Titans and the Jags in division. They have a little Buccaneers action. They have some Saints, which could be tough, and some Panthers. But it is because that one's in Indianapolis. They have a little Texans, like I said, this weekend, and that is it. So their schedule doesn't look half bad. On the flip side, my man Deshaun Watson and the Texans will have to welcome in next week, back-to-back home games, the GOAT, Tom Brady and the Patriots. They've got the Broncos also at home the following 3 weeks in a row at home. Then they got Titans twice and Bucks. So this is an important game, David.
Yes, it is.
I know you think very highly of the Colts head coach Frank Reich.
Yep.
He certainly had them on a very good track. And, they're right in the thick of it, looking to repeat getting into the playoffs again this year.
Yep.
Without Andrew Luck and a lot of different pieces. Texans desperately need this one, I feel like. After last week, it was a loss, like I said, in embarrassing fashion. I totally expect Deshaun to bounce back. My biggest bugaboo is this defense is a serious problem. Serious problem. And the offensive line still isn't that great. Deshaun is doing everything he can. It's gotten better, but let's not get it twisted. I'm sure Watson would much rather have that Colts offensive line than his own at this point in time with the guys like Quentin Nelson and so forth. So what do you think, man? How you feeling about this game? Do you have an over-under, a spread? I know we're not going to call them, but just for understanding
For
of
its
what,
and giggles.
Yeah, for understanding what, Vegas thinks the game script's going to be and what we think it's going to be.
The spread on this game's 3.5 points going to the Colts. So basically, it's a pick 'em in a neutral site. It's a 45 over under.
You mean on home site?
Yeah, meaning sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. So
We always say that if the home team's giving 3, that's straight pick 'em.
yeah,
That's
yep.
like it being no spread at all.
Now, the bets are heavy to Houston on this one. I can see some of it. What's kind of interesting to me, I'm going to throw out a few statisticals. You've got the Houston Texans are 19th in points allowed per game. And the Colts are 15th in points allowed per game. So kind of some middling teams. Colts at about 20.6 and Houston at 23.2. Here is where it gets kind of interesting, and it's kind of tells me a little bit about the inconsistencies of these teams throughout the year. In yards allowed per game, you've got the Houston defense at 25th, which I don't know that I'd be all that surprised by that watching them play. But interestingly,
and it's last week probably definitely blew that number up a bit.
Yeah, interestingly, the Colts are 8th in yards allowed, but yet they're only 15th in points scored. So if I'm going to try to kind of look at that, I kind of look at it and go, and I was a little surprised. I thought I would see a bigger discrepancy in the turnovers, but I guess in reality, this is a decent-sized discrepancy. The Colts are 23rd in turnovers. They're a -3 this year.
Okay.
So that leads me to believe
turnovers against, meaning they're giving up.
They're getting short fields. It would be my guess, which is
they're
why they're
getting or giving short fields.
Giving.
Okay.
This is all defense I'm talking about.
All right. And how about the Texans?
Texans, on the other hand, are 14th +1, so they're pretty much
what were the
just
Colts?
about break even. 23rd at -3.
Okay, so +1. So yeah, we're right at even.
Yeah, so I guess what it tells me is the Indianapolis Colts D is playing tough, but the offense isn't doing them as many favors. That's kind of what I kind of get from that.
Yeah. Stingy defense, nothing
maybe
explosive.
not flipping the field.
But they're able to hold team, bend but don't break.
Yeah.
Most of the game.
Now, Houston, on the other hand, giving up the yards and throwing out some points while they're at it. So, again, I look at this. What's kind of interesting to me, and then I can continue to go down.
What was that over-under on this game?
-3.5.
No, over-under.
Oh, over-under was 45.5. 45.5. Opened at 46.5. So when I kind of look at these teams and I'm trying to figure out, who are they? What are they trying to do? What's the plan in this game? You're talking about, which this boggles my mind considering all we talked about with these two teams. Now I go to the offensive side. If you had to bet, where do the Indianapolis Colts rank in rushing offense?
I'd probably say somewhere in the middle of the pack, teens, maybe like
12 to 16 kind of range?
Maybe like a 15.
15?
Yeah.
Okay, where do you think Houston is?
Rushing the ball?
Rushing the ball.
See, they haven't been able to find that identity there. There's been some good games out of Carlos Hyde that we've seen, but it's not consistent enough.
Yeah.
Again, I think that also has to do with the offensive line. I do think Houston's offensive line's better at run blocking than pass blocking. But if I were to have to say, I got to be honest, I think it would be pretty close. Maybe a little ahead just because Marlon Mack had a good game like the first or second game of the year. I think he had a pretty good game yardage-wise this past game, but has been pretty quiet. Outside of that, you got Hines, you got all those other jokers back there, Wilkins. I would say maybe Houston rushing the ball is ahead of them by a few nuggets, maybe like a 12.
Okay. Grab the top of your head because it's about to pop off because I was shocked when I saw this. You're talking about the 4th and 5th ranked rushing teams, respectively.
What?
141 yards per game for Indianapolis, 140.7.
Wow. I am shocked.
For Houston.
Man, that makes us sound stupid.
Well, you know what? What's interesting to me on this is, okay, so I'm looking at these defenses, and I'm thinking short fields. I'm thinking, okay, so I'm starting to kind of try to play games.
Is it the quarterback rushing attempts that are kind of giving it that extra little nugget? I mean, we're not
I
talking
would
Lamar
believe
Jackson
right.
and Kyler Murray. It's not like they're meaning to do that. Now, to show him when he scrambles, he'll go, but not a lot of drawn-up runs. There's a few.
Yeah.
And from a Brissett perspective, I can't imagine there's hardly any, if any, at all, rather him just running when he has to scramble.
Yeah, and you'd think, like, Houston with a winning record, when you think about Houston's offense, you think about Deshaun Watson, his arm, that set of receivers.
Yeah, I mean, Carlos Hyde is the running back there. There's no other.
Yeah, and they
if you're
spell
talking
him
about
Duke Johnson, and that's passing. But that's passing.
Right. That's right. Because he rarely gets the ball rushing. It's always throwing. That is shocking.
Yep. So kind of I'm trying to look at this and see, like, all right, you can't just take all the heavy things and just see what gives. And I'm just not really sure. And I look at these teams and I see inconsistency. So a 10-point win by Indianapolis wouldn't shock me.
No.
A 10-point win by Houston wouldn't shock me.
No.
A 1-point game either way wouldn't shock me. I think it's a matter of who can get the groove in the running game first is kind of what I see in this.
Good.
Certainly
Good.
Houston's got the better passing offense. They're 13th at 260 yards a game, while Indianapolis is 216 a game at 28th in the league. So it's a game where their spreads are on their winning. These are two teams that generally, according to the statistics, win close games. Houston's a 1.3 point spread to the positive, which would make sense for a winning team, and Indianapolis is a 2.1 spread on there. Again, the NFL doesn't have huge spreads in that overall, but I don't know. That running game really kind of made it interesting to me. We've seen Marlon Mack look awesome, and we've seen Marlon Mack where you go, where's Marlon?
Well, he's probably not going to play, and they've got the other backs are Nyheim Hines and Jordan Wilkins. Jordan Wilkins out of NC State. He's more of the runner.
Are you sure he's not? He's not listed on the injury report.
I don't think he is. They brought in another guy, Williams, I think, too.
Okay.
Because I think he fractured his hand, dude. So
yes,
last week,
you're right. I
so
forgot.
I don't.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
may
you're
come
right.
back
You're
this
right.
year,
You're right.
all patched up, but it is a running back that's got to carry the ball.
You're right. Hand surgery. I think they're
that's
saying
not
he
good
might have
for
to have.
Yep.
So I guess in that sense, and I guess I would be leaning Texans
I
on
guess.
this one, and it's also at home. This division, and when we talk about the playoff hunt, this division is real interesting. Nobody really stands out, but nobody's a dumpster fire.
Yeah, I mean, nobody seems to want to take control of it either.
Right.
Again, Wilkins, he's more the runner for in Mac's absence, and then Nyheim Hines is more the throwing back. But back in Week 7, Colts on their own turf won this game 30-23. I think it's going to be much closer. I know you said you wouldn't be surprised either way. I think it's going to be much closer.
Yeah,
but
I
I'll
would
be
agree.
honest
I'd
with
agree.
you. I think Houston will win because I think this is a must-win for Houston. I think it's a must-win.
Yeah, well, I think when you look at the playoff breakdown, it's probably a must win for
if
both.
it's this close, though.
Yeah.
And Indy's got both matchups won. If they win this game, that is almost the trump card, right?
Yeah.
But at least if it's close at the end and Indy took one and now Houston's going to steal one on their own turf, then you can kind of mitigate that. You neutralize that whole thing. They don't have that necessarily trump card at the end. So
I look at it this way. When I got something that kind of is all that squirrely and looking both back and forth, I believe the Texans will win, and here's why. Who's the best player on the field for each team? And when I look at it and I go, all right, clearly it's Deshaun Watson on the Texans. Especially with a Marlon Mack out, is there a player that special that has the impact on the game as a whole?
yes,
In
my mind, yes. And if he's
Indianapolis
healthy and back this week, T.Y. Hilton.
But he's showing out right now.
They're
again,
saying he's going to get back this week. I can imagine because he knows the gravity of this. He can have that game, especially as a slot guy underneath. You talk about the running game, yeah,
Sure.
but with Mack out and with the Houston's defense is not very good, especially on the back end is where they're really hurting. I mean, they're rotating dudes left and right. That's where it could be had, like in that underneath intermediate, and then just let him go with the ball.
Sure.
If I was going to say from an Indianapolis side, I mean, the easy answer is Jacoby Brissett is the impact player for Indianapolis. I just don't think he is that guy. But at the same token, you could see the Texans throwing it on him too. I don't think Indianapolis necessarily has the ability to get explosive like Houston can get.
Yep.
So we'll have to see.
But it'd be interesting.
Yep. Now we're going to jump into some of the games on Sunday, starting with 2 at the 1 o'clock session. Divisional matchup again in the NFC South as the Carolina Panthers travel down to New Orleans to take on the Saints. Both teams lost to the Falcons in the past 2 weeks. Carolina at home last week, the week before New Orleans at home, and both lost in convincing fashion, meaning they didn't have anything for the Falcons, who knows what they are. We believe that it's not what we think we're seeing, but This is a big one because, as we'll talk about our playoff picture, this is another one we have on here, not just because it's a divisional matchup, but these are the two teams fighting for that division in the NFC South. Now, mind you, the Saints have a big lead with an 8-2 record to the Panthers 5-5, but there's still some games to play.
They have to play, I believe they have to play the Panthers twice.
They do. They have to play the Panthers this weekend, and then they will. Who are we talking about? Oh, yeah.
New Orleans.
Sorry. And then Carolina will play the very last week of the year. They'll get the Saints at home. So if one team were to go, if Carolina were to go on a run and the Saints were to slip up a few times, it couldn't mean the division. I think what it really means is more so for Carolina is, they need to be striving for the division and in hopes that if they just fall short, that it'll be good enough for the record to get them a wild card.
I'll be honest. I think this is the Panthers' only shot to get in the playoffs. They have to win this game.
Yep.
And we'll kind of get into why in a little bit. But my belief in this game, I think New Orleans is going to take them.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. The Saints defense got back on track last week. They've been pretty good all year. And last week, I believe Lattimore was out. And they still did all right against Jameis Winston and the Bucs. The Panthers' defense has been okay on the back end. Maybe two or three of their four guys on the backside can hold up pretty well, but they've been run on horribly the past several weeks in particular.
Well,
last week, New Orleans offense got back on track, and we said it in our recap. Like, there was a lot of involvement, though we didn't see the end zone, in getting Kamara back to form. Now, granted, he's been banged up after the first few weeks. He's been kind of banged up in and out since then. Last week he seemed like Kamara.
Yeah, here's kind of where this game swings to me. Number one, we know how New Orleans generally is at home, though. That has been a little bit of a conundrum for them lately. But I'll say this is where the game changes. In this league, there is probably maybe 2 or 3 teams that can throw a back at you that can do exactly what Christian McCaffrey can do. You could almost say Kamara is a poor man's McCaffrey, but I think that's understating Kamara, meaning a guy that can be that versatile. Here's the difference to me. Well, I said Kyle Allen 3 weeks ago, that was his first time throwing an interception. He obviously had a horrible game last week and threw 4 interceptions. The Saints are 4th in the league +8 in turnovers. Wow. So, to me, I start kind of matching player for player. Breeze generally doesn't turn the ball over.
He's not going to have a secondary that's that daunting.
The Saints have the best receiver in the league. They have a much better defense. They're 6th in the league in points allowed per game.
Ted Ginn got involved last week. He's getting back, and Traquan Smith, I believe, is supposed to kind of get back to form, which all that means is more toys for Breeze.
Yeah, I think
Jared Cook was involved last week, so yeah.
I think one thing I will say about the Saints is they know how to finish a team. And again, when we talk about the playoff hunt, you'll see where the Panthers' road is very, very daunting for them to get in the playoffs. And I think this is a must-win, and I think the Saints know how to go for the kill shot.
Yep, I think this is a must-win for Carolina as well, but I don't think they have enough. You will have from a Carolina defense on New Orleans offense. I totally expect the majority of the game for Luke Kuechly to be spying Kamara. Okay, that's just what he does. Okay, it's not like he's going to be strapped to him, but they're going to have him responsible when he's not coming in on blitz packages to watch him coming out of the backfield. Because if he's running up the line, he's going to go up there. He's going to be up there, and the line's going to be up there. But from the other way, flipping it the other way, with McCaffrey in the backfield, and though the D-line is real good too, I think, for the Saints, I think they're better at putting pressure on quarterbacks than stopping the run. Who's the linebacker? Who's Saints linebackers? We've got Demario Davis. You got
I think
Holton Jumper. Stephon Anthony's no longer there, I don't think. He's on AJ Klein.
They need
Josh Morgan.
I think they're going to need in this game.
McCaffrey. They have to do what the Falcons did. McCaffrey's going to get his.
Yeah.
Bend but don't break.
Well, and it's this. This is the other piece. Gerald McCoy and Brian Burns are going to have to play lights out because you are going to have to
Those
rush
are
with
Carolina's
four.
DNs.
Carolina's, tackle and end.
Tackle and DN, yeah.
Because they are going to have to
Did
keep.
you say McCoy? Yeah, that's right.
They're going to have to rush the passer with four guys to be effective in this game. I think that's a tall order. I like Kuechly running up the middle, and running with Kamara to a degree, but at the same time, Kamara's lightning fast, and he's not quite as fast as he used to
and
be.
let's not get it twisted. Greg Olson, as old as he is, has been heavily involved and been a great security blanket for Allen, and he's performed. I mean, he's helped Allen in situations. And where does he go? Where do the tight ends go? You're going to go across the middle. So from that Saints perspective, you're gonna be giving up somewhere. I think at the end of the day, I think this is going to be one of those Cam Jordan shows. And to your point, I think it's going to call as the young quarterback and Kyle Allen turn the ball over a lot like we saw last week and 2 weeks prior.
Yeah, I don't. It could be a blowout, but either way, I think the Saints take this game.
If the Saints can do that, that's not just stopping. That's that flipping the field and putting their offense in great position, and that's an offense at home you don't want to do that. Happen.
Exactly.
So the next game on the 1 o'clock slate we want to discuss is the Seattle Seahawks traveling across country to the city of brotherly love.
Yep.
And taking on the Philadelphia Eagles. Seattle comes in at 8-2. Again, we'll talk about the playoff picture, but as in our recap, they are right behind the 49ers with a victory in their first head-to-head matchup with them. Philadelphia Eagles, 5-5. They are surprisingly fighting for the top of their division with the Cowboys. The NFC East could be the worst division in football. And just took a loss to the Patriots. That loss, Patriots win 17-10. I think the worst part about it is that Philadelphia was winning the game 10-0 and seemed to be in control for a quarter and a half starting the game, and then it just disappeared. I don't think that necessarily New England's defense did anything spectacular, or offense did anything spectacular, but their defense definitely helped them out. Eagles need a win here. So do the Seahawks, but the Eagles need a win here. And I don't know if they're getting it going up against Mr. MVP 1A in Russell Wilson.
Yeah, listen, I'm not. This is probably the when I talk about traveling across the country, this is the worst scenario for traveling because it's a West Coast team, 3 hours behind, coming east and playing at 1. That's tough. I would tell you the Eagles are playing for their playoff lives in this, so there is that. But understand that when we say the Seahawks they need this desperately, too. And here's why.
Man.
This is a team that's sitting in the number 1 wild card spot, but is really flipping one game on the Niners puts them in a very likely scenario where they would get home field advantage.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're talking about home field advantage when you're Seattle versus playing a wild card where you got to play an extra
how
game.
In the NFL, often, I mean, I don't think it matters as much as it does in college having home field advantage. Sans a few places.
That's one of them.
That could be the one of them.
Yeah, and I'll say this. As much
it's
as
going to be tough. Philly's not an easy place to play either, but it's not like going to Seattle.
And here's what makes this game, I think, really, really interesting is as good as the Seahawks have played, they've been inconsistent, and they haven't been winning the way we're used to seeing them win. Their games, even against some of the lesser opponents, have been close, even at home. So, there's that. And then you've got the inconsistency of the Eagles. So this game can go in a lot of different directions. If Russell Wilson is on his A game, that's trouble because I kind of talked about it a little bit in our recap. And I said this, Carson Wentz has played 10 games this year. He has only gone over 300 yards twice.
Mm-hmm.
He's only gone above 250 yards 3 times. That includes those 300-yard games. you're talking about a guy that's pretty much been in the 175 to 225 range really consistently.
And this is a guy that, like, coming out of college, there was some talk about the use of his legs, not like a Lamar Jackson, but he could use them. He's a big guy, but
then started taking injuries.
He's not. They're not drawing it up for him.
Yep.
When he scrambles on it, he's not really getting much. He's hanging in the pocket and not throwing the ball quick enough. I mean, like, he doesn't have time always.
Yep.
But there are times that he does have time and he's sitting there and he just doesn't get it done.
Yeah, I mean, you could have Alshon Jeffrey out again, and I think that's the look on him right now. Jordan Howard was banged up last week and didn't play.
Even bigger than that, they're Lane Johnson. Their big offensive tackle is probably not going to play.
I think this, I really think the Seahawks get it done. This is the Seahawks time of year traditionally. Now, they haven't been traditional to some of the stuff we've seen for them. And again, you talk about the Seahawks and that home field advantage. Forget the 12th man, which is going to be hard to forget, especially come playoff time. But the weather in Seattle in the end of the year and in January.
Tough.
We're not just talking about like snow and all that. We're talking about wind. If it's not snowing, potentially rain. It's just it brings so many elements into play, and those elements are actually when Russell Wilson, to me, is at his best. So I think there's a lot of where normally I would say the team that's kind of on the outside looking in has got more of the motivation. I'm not sure in this game. So we'll see. We'll see what plays out. You never know what you're going to see, particularly with the Eagles and with the Seahawks. Again, they've played a lot of close games this year, so it'll be interesting. I think it'll be a fun one to watch.
Yeah, well, the over/under is the second highest of the day, coming in at 49. And let's see, where do we have the Texans on that one where they were giving? Yeah. So this one, let's see, what do we got here? The Eagles are giving 1.5. That's surprising. Look, Seattle's defense is not what we're used to. It's not the Legion of Boom. They're ho-hum. They're not awful. Jadeveon Clowney needs to step up more, and this is the time of year where he can really turn it on. Philadelphia's defense, their front is good. Like I had said before, Fletcher Cox, he's a guy that can heavily disrupt the game, but their back end sucks. And you're going to see some Tyler Lockett, some DK Metcalf. You might even see a little. You'll see Hollister, the new tight end, and you might even see a little Josh Gordon in this one.
Yeah.
And I think that look, Russ is great on the move. He's got great pocket awareness, knows when it breaks down, knows when to get rid of the ball, knows when to move, when to run it, when to sling it. And that, I think, is what's going to cause a lot of problems is when he gets out on the move for Philadelphia. But, look, if Philadelphia loses back-to-back home games, you might see batteries thrown by those fans.
Hell, if they win the game, they might see batteries
Yeah,
thrown.
that's right. All right, the next game is the only one we're going to talk about in the 4 o'clock slate.
There's only 2.
Yep. And we've got the Dallas Cowboys coming off their win in Detroit, traveling to New England to take off on the Patriots, who are coming home from their win in Philly. Back-to-back weeks that New England is playing the NFC East. I think they already they did. They're thus far 3-3. They beat the Giants, they beat the Redskins, and now they've beaten the Eagles. So now they get to go for the quadfecta.
Yeah, in this one, here's the thing is the Pats always have their eyes on the playoffs. And so how this one plays out will be interesting. There is this talk about where Brady's at. Their offense just, it's not prolific when you look at it. Defense is still very strong. You are not going to out-scheme Belichick very often. It's very, very hard to do. All the talk about how Harbaugh is one of the few guys that has been able to do that consistently against the Pats. This is going to be a tough game for the Cowboys. I think for the Cowboys to stay in this, they have got to be able to pound the ball consistently, and they got to get some pressure on Brady, throw a little bit of confusion at it. I think they're going to need to get turnovers in this game.
Well, and let's see. The over-under on this is 46. Pats are given 6.5, which is more for them than because last week they were given 3.5 to the Eagles, but they are at home.
That's a big line going against another playoff team.
Yeah. For the Patriots, for the Cowboys, I mean, Zeke's done well, but there's some weeks where it's like, where are you? And Dak has been great in that when that's happened, but they need both of them to be clicking like they have a few games of the season, 3, 4, 5 weeks back, and. This is a tough defense in New England, and I think that Belichick will scheme to take away Zeke because we know he tries to take away one of your best options. I think that's what he's going to do. I think Dak will do his best to perform the Dak dance as Zeke did, but I just think that the defense for New England is just going to be too much, and I anticipate turnovers. That you maybe even it could be in epic proportions from the sense that Dak really hasn't had one of those games this year. Zeke this is the time of year he needs to be way more consistent, meaning that his floor of his production needs to be above average for certain. And I just don't know. Now, I mean, on the other side of the ball, I think New England could get a little bit more right this week offensively. I don't know why. I know that Dallas has a decent defense. I think DeMarcus Lawrence is hurt, so that will make a big difference because that's obviously going to give Brady a lot more time back there, and we know that Brady's a guy that typically doesn't move out of the pocket, so it's important to give him pressure from the edges and up the middle. And they have some good guys up the middle, but not to the caliber of some other teams. So we'll see. I think it'll be just a fun game to watch. Just for the mere sense that I'm an NFC East guy, and though the division's not good, that the Pats, see what they're doing to our division single-handedly, dropping everybody for a loss. Awesome. And, good talk. Now, I just want to jump in with one thing that we neglected to highlight. The over-under for the Carolina-New Orleans game is 47. It looks like it's the third highest of the day. The Saints are giving 9.5, so wow.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. The last game we were going to address is Sunday Night Football as the Green Bay Packers travel a click out west to San Francisco and take on the 49ers. Both teams going in with winning records and at the top of their divisions. The Packers at 8-2, the 49ers at 9-1. Packers come off they were on bye last week, were they not?
Yes.
Okay, good. And we know the 49ers, they had their game with the Cardinals, which was, I think, a lot closer for comfort, but still banged up. We'll see if Kittle comes back for them. I don't know where Breida's at. They got some injuries, and they're starting to play some tougher teams and maybe get exposed in some places. Some turnovers for Jimmy Grapes that aren't what you need to see this time of year. And on the flip side of the ball, I mean, look, Aaron Rodgers has had a phenomenal year, even in the games that he's not thrown up huge numbers, which he has here and there. He's managing the game on their running game has been outstanding. Their defense is much better than it has been the prior couple of years, but not completely outstanding. I mean, they definitely have chinks in their armor as well. I went over the over-unders and the line for this game. No, I didn't. This is a 46 over-under. The 49ers are giving 3 to the Green Bay Packers.
Okay.
So what do you think, man?
Here's kind of the, interesting backstory, and I want to preface this by saying what made guys like Tom Brady, Michael Jordan exceptional is these and players
playing
like that.
Big in big games.
Yeah, but also it's it's the drive that they have and where they get their drive from. So I kind of go back to Tom Brady. Tom Brady got passed on by all NFL teams for 6 rounds. 5 rounds, and then an additional in the 6th. He was the 199th pick. And they always say, was that like, and he says, was that ever a motivation for you? And he was like, yeah, to prove everybody wrong. And he's had that motivation throughout his career. Michael Jordan said, you know what? I was cut from my basketball team in high school. That gave me motivation. And then I wasn't drafted number 1. And so they find little things to challenge themselves and to get themselves into that crushing mode. What I think is going to be real interesting in this game is, don't forget, back in Aaron Rodgers' draft year, there was a belief that the quarterback class was weak and that there was really only 2 quarterbacks being considered, and that was Alex Smith and Aaron Rodgers. And if you'll remember, this is one of probably the original showing guys sitting at the draft and that first experience of a guy expecting to get his name called and then sitting for a long time. San Francisco 49ers drafted Alex Smith. Now remember, the San Francisco 49ers had a shot at Aaron Rodgers, who was a Cal product, comes from California, and they passed on him. And so did 16 other teams after that, to where he was drafted number 18 overall. And Rodgers obviously has had a Hall of Fame career. The Niners have struggled for a long time to find a quarterback since then. And so it'll be interesting to see, is there a little bit of extra motivation for Rodgers to show up in front of not only the team that passed him over and drafted another quarterback, but also playing in front of his home area, in California and in that Bay Area. So, I guess a lot of people may downplay those facts and go, Aaron Rodgers has been in the game for a long time. But again, I talk about how great players find these little things to motivate them. And it might be interesting to see, does Aaron Rodgers just want to put a little bit of extra mustard on this game, with that team being the one that passed him over for Alex Smith and him coming back home to the Bay Area? So we'll see. We'll see what kind of happens.
Interesting narrative, my friend. Interesting. All right. So those are the games we want to do preview for Week 12. Now what we want to do is talk about playoff picture. Okay? We probably got about a little over 20 minutes I want to keep this to. So let's talk. We'll start with the records in the AFC, or we'll go with all the AFC teams that end their records. Right now, sitting in the first slot of the AFC is the New England Patriots. Surprise, surprise, at 9-1. Right behind them at 8-2 is the Baltimore Ravens. And if you recall, Baltimore welcomed New England into their home a few weeks back and put the wood to them. The only loss that the Pats have. At number 3, after coming off a win last night, the Kansas City Chiefs sit at 7-4. At number 4, the Indianapolis Colts at 6-4, pretty much because they have the head-to-head with Houston. So those are the top 4 and the leaders in each division, respectively. The Pats in the AFC North, Pats in AFC East, Ravens AFC North, Chiefs AFC South, AFC West, Colts AFC South.
South.
Sorry. Now, wild card positions. The first wild card position goes to the Buffalo Bills out of the AFC East, sitting at 7-3. And wild card position 2 goes to the Houston Texans with the equal record to the team in front of them in the AFC South and the Colts. But again, the head-to-head. And Texans 6-4. So that's where we stand in the AFC. Let's stick on the AFC. Let's talk about that a little bit and talk about the teams in the hunt.
Okay. To me, the AFC and the NFC have a very different pictures as far as the playoffs are concerned. The interesting part in the AFC to me is you got a few scenarios playing out there. And the first scenario, just starting at the top, that sticks out to me is a 1-game difference between the Patriots and the Ravens. Mm-hmm. Home field advantage for this particular matchup will matter immensely. The Ravens have been one of the few teams that have gotten to the Patriots in multiple attempts. Obviously, we saw it during the year, but I'm talking about historically the John Harbaugh versus Bill Belichick challenges that they've had, and the Ravens have given the Pats some trouble. Again, more dominant style defense in the past from the Ravens. But again, we talked about how the Ravens' defense is surging, whereas the Pats' offense, it's questionable. I tried to, in my mind, talk about the diminished skills of Tom Brady last year. Had a Patriots guy that worked in my office, and I wrote it down on a Post-it note, and I stuck it on his wall. Like after Week 7, I said, the Patriots will not win the Super Bowl and may not make the playoffs.
Boy, were you wrong.
Let's just say where that Post-it note ended up at the end of the year. Right back on my desk.
Samsonite, I was way off.
So here's the thing is, but I do believe that where that game's played is going to really matter. Again, that's assuming that, but again, that's the Pats are always thinking way ahead. And so that's why I talk about this game this weekend against the Cowboys. The Pats know what they're playing for. There isn't a lot of space. Now, nobody's going to catch the Bills aren't going to catch the Patriots. 2-game lead this late in the season against the Bills.
I mean, the way it looks, the Bills will have to go to New England. They lost to them barely in Buffalo. They'll have to go to New England, last week, game before last.
Yep.
And, in terms of the other teams the Patriots have, Cowboys, then they have the Texans in Houston, Kansas City in New England, the Bengals, doesn't matter where, the Dolphins, doesn't matter where, and again, the Bills. Whereas on the Ravens side, they have, they're on a bye no, they're not. They got the Rams Monday night. And then they have the Niners, they have the Bills too, but they have the Jets, Browns, Steelers.
I guess what I think we're going to see over the next 6 weeks is going to be, this is going to be able to, they're going to, not only are teams able to jockey within the, the bye weeks, not the bye week, there's some play there. It looks like right now the Ravens and Pats are the head of the class, but there's a lot of movement in 3 through 6. Plus, I want to talk about a couple of other things. Number one, teams that are in the hunt. First of all, you've got, I think really at 4 and 6, just given some of the records that are sitting there, which leaves the Jags and the Browns, I would say the Jags have the more realistic, that doesn't mean they are going to, but of the two teams, have the more realistic shot at the playoffs, and here's why. They're 2 games behind first place in the loss column. That's it.
In their division.
In their division,
funny,
right.
Because Titans are 1.
Right.
Titans are
right.
5. The whole AFC South is either in the playoff picture or in the hunt.
Yeah, and they've got literally 4 teams that could win this division. The Titans have to play the Colts and the Texans. Even if you were to make the Jags an afterthought, they get to play the Colts and Texans 3 times. I think twice against the Texans and once against the Colts.
Yeah, I mean the Titans. Go ahead.
Well, so the point of this is that it's dicey, but I also look at their wild cards. Their best wild card record is 7-3. Their second best is 6-4 right now in the Texans. There also is a Raiders team. Raiders team right now, if you look at the West, the Chiefs are 7-4. The Raiders are 6-4. They got a game at hand. The Chiefs are off this week. Raiders could be tied with the Chiefs when it's all said and done. Now, they lose the tiebreaker as of this point because of the first game of the season, right? Was that the first game? I think it was the first. Oh, no. They won that game. The Raiders won that game.
Yeah, the Raiders won the game.
So the Raiders would own the tiebreaker at this given point. So the Chiefs are not locked into this playoff spot, especially not looking at the way the team's playing. So you could potentially see 2 teams that are now in division leads that aren't even in the playoffs when this all wraps up and said and done. There's a lot more at stake here, a lot more working. So I think the in the hunt field, so to speak, which right now I got the Raiders at 6-4, the Steelers at 5-5, the Titans at 5-5, the Browns at 4-6, probably the most fringe of all of them, and then the Jags at 4-6, still fringe, but at least have games at hand and a division that's not, with the best record. So here's the point: is this can all get very, very muddled. The in the hunt teams are not long shots in this; they've got legitimate shots. I think it's going to really make the AFC really interesting in 3 through 6, in my opinion.
Yeah, because I think 1 and 2 are all but sewn up between the Pats and the Ravens, but it's still, the Chiefs are still on the cusp there. There's no guarantee they're going to go in there. You talk about the AFC South, the Jaguars and the Texans have played twice, but the Jaguars still have to play, and the Colts and Jags just played this weekend, so they still have to play the Colts. They have the Chargers, Falcons, Raiders, Bucks, and then they have the Titans. On the flip side, the
Which
Titans
are some weak teams or divisional teams.
And then on the flip side, the Titans look to have the tougher schedule between those two AFC South teams, kind of on the lower end. They've got the Saints. They got to play the Texans twice. They got to play the Colts, and then they have the Jags again. So they see a tougher road. However, all those games could veritably control their own destiny.
Yep.
Because they're big games, but they're all critical games against, 3 of those 4 I just mentioned were against divisional opponents. So it's interesting. I think that the Raiders have a legit shot. I thought the Steelers did. We'll see what happens after the whole Myles Garrett events, if that maybe galvanizes the team or if it doesn't. I mean, I think it was an ugly look. But, the Steelers looked ugly in that game against the Browns. So, when we thought they were surging, was it just a bump in the road? Do they still have a shot? Yes, they do. But now there is no room for error for the in-the-hunt teams. The Browns at 4-6, there's nothing that tells me they're going to get there. But wouldn't it be something if they did?
Yeah.
And made a run, because at the beginning of the year, there was all the hype for the Browns, and this was their year, as it seems to have been the past couple years.
Well, and let's just say the Bills are no lock to be in here. I like that team, but just this part about the Bills,
They
understand.
still gotta play New England.
They're not just New England. They've got, let me run through their schedule. So this week, just to give you an idea, they played Denver. Now, generally, I'd give them that, but interestingly, Denver gave Minnesota all they could handle.
It is in
last
Buffalo.
Week. It is in Buffalo.
And it'll probably be cold.
Right. But, Denver could give them fits. And they're not winning big games, but after that, they play Dallas. Then they play the Ravens. And then after that, they get the Steelers who are a playoff
in New England
hunt right now. And then they get the Patriots. They finish up with Miami, so they've
they finish up with the Jets. But yes.
Oh, did I say it?
Yep, you're right, though. I mean, their road is tough to hoe. There's no guarantee that they'll be in there at that wild card. So, I mean, there's some definite, like you said, after 1 and 2, that 3 to 6 slot, I think is wide open. I absolutely agree.
Yeah, and
absolutely
and I would tell you, the one team that's on the outside looking in at this particular moment, who I think is most dangerous, is the Raiders.
Yeah. Because they're finding something on the defensive side of the ball, which I look at the other in-the-hunt teams. The Steelers are too, but last week we didn't see it. Like, it started off bad. They got consistent for 4 or 5 weeks straight. The Titans, stingy defense, but nothing out of this world. Browns defense, you just don't know. Jags defense, you just don't know. Jalen's not there anymore. But the Raiders' defense is finding something. I would say I like them the best out of what I'm looking there. And from the flip side of the ball, I should be saying I like the Browns' offense the best, but I like the Raiders. It's better than the Steelers. It's better than the Titans. Those quarterback situations are not great. Jags, not great. So I like the Raiders. Yeah, you're right.
Well, the Chiefs got to worry, because if they win right now, then they get to play the Chiefs head-to-head, and then they get some games going. So, to me, again, I'm going to tell you this right now. This is the most, and in a good way, muddled of the 2 playoff pictures, I think.
But that'll make it the most competitive of the two conferences, because now we're going to move to the NFC, and though there is still opportunity for some in-the-hunt teams, there definitely seems to be a separation from really the top 5, maybe even 6, compared to everybody that's trying to get in there. So to start with, we've got the NFC West with their division leading team in the San Francisco 49ers at number 1 in the NFC at 9-1. The Green Bay Packers sit at number 2 at 8-2. They're in the head of the NFC North. The New Orleans Saints at 8-2, leading the NFC South. The Dallas Cowboys at 6-4, leading the NFC East. So that's your top 4 teams in order. On the wild card slot currently, your first slot goes to an 8-2 Seattle Seahawks team, and that's only because the Niners are 9-1. Seattle does have the first matchup head-to-head win. There will be another. At 8-3, the Minnesota Vikings slot in as the second wild card team out of the NFC North.
Yeah, so then this is where, to me, if I'm looking at this, I'd put, if someone gave me this field, the top these 6 teams versus any other mixture, I would bet that these 6 teams are going to be in there at the end, with the exception, I'd still bet on it, but I would say the only really spot to me that's up for grabs right now is
the NFC East.
with
and
the
that's
Cowboys
why I
and
said
Eagles.
5 out of these top 6, maybe 6. That would be if I included the Cowboys. But again, the Eagles are at 5-5, right behind them, and it's been a change of possession.
Yep.
Shall we say?
Yep.
Every week, the other one gets the lead. You know, it's like one week it's Philly, next week is Dallas, then it's Philly. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, I think here's what's really cool about this is you've got the Niners, Packers, and Saints all vying for 2 spots to get that bye and that home field advantage, at least through the first game.
Did you seriously put the Bears there at 4?
All right, well, here's why. Well, I left it with the 4 and 6.
Yeah, go.
But
Keep going.
I'll trash that in a minute. Don't worry about it.
Go.
But here's the interesting part. So not only do you have that, you've got a Niners team that has to play both the Packers and the Saints before the end of the year. So I don't think the Saints will not play the Packers, I don't believe. I'm pretty sure they don't, because the Bears won the division. The Bears had to play the Saints. So you've got that mess right there. But here you have a Vikings team that is one step away from the Packers, which is the difference between, at this given moment, getting your first week off or getting a road game against someone else.
And mind you, earlier in the year, the Packers beat the Vikings in Green Bay 21-16.
Yep.
And the week before last, the Packers will go to Minnesota for a rematch.
Right. And if you remember that game, that was a game where the Green Bay got out 21-0 early in the game, and Minnesota came back and couldn't quite finish.
Kind of like last weekend.
Yeah.
Minnesota did the same against a bad. Who'd they play last weekend? They played
Broncos.
A team we thought that was bad.
Yeah, and then then you also have at the same point, you've got a 1-game difference, same scenario for the Seahawks and the Niners. So right now, this is a very real situation where we've got the Niners as number 1 and the Packers at number 2 and the Seahawks and Vikings respectively in the wild card position. In 2 weeks from now, it could be the Seahawks and the Vikings. Now, the Vikings wouldn't jump up to the number 2 spot without the Saints falling, but they're in play with that.
Be in the top 4 leading their division.
You could have division
and
winners
kick
flipping.
the other guy in the wild card. I get it.
Yeah, so it's just there's a lot that can happen within those top 6 teams, as opposed to there could be changes in the top teams in the AFC. I don't see it here, and here's why. Let's get into in the hunt. Here are your top 4 in the hunt teams. You got the Rams at 6-4. You got the Eagles at 5-5, the Panthers at 5-5, and the Bears at 4-6.
None of those teams, I think, are worth a hoot.
Well,
the only reason the Eagles might get in is because that, like we said, it's been like choose your own adventure here. It's changed possessions in the top of the NFC East every week.
Yeah, and here's the thing, though. Okay, so let's just look at it just from a record standpoint.
Football.
The Rams are the only team within 1 game of a wild card in the loss column, within 1 game of the wild card.
Yeah, but they look terrible.
Well, I'm getting to that, but my point is they're 1 game out, but their next game is against the Ravens. So if Minnesota wins and they lose, they could be 2 games out of just the bottom wild card with only 5 games left to play. The only realistic team in my mind that's got a shot at this, I still don't think they'll get in, is the Eagles, because they're only 1 game behind the Cowboys for the division win.
They will play at the end of the year one more time.
Yeah. But again, that's assuming the Eagles can survive a Seahawks game. But again, at the same time, the Cowboys got to play the Pats. They both could end up taking a loss. That's probably the one division between the AFC South and the NFC East where you could see an 8-8 playoff team.
Yeah.
I think those are probably the 2 places. To me, the Panthers, again, they've got such a tough road because the only way I see them getting in 5-5, they're already 2 games behind in the loss column. Number 1, that's why they have to win. I don't think they can catch the Saints, period, even if they win 2 games. It's just they're going to be 2 games behind just in the wild card in and of itself.
Yeah, the Panthers are going to have a tough time getting in. I know the rest of they're way above the rest of their division, really. I don't see it there. I don't see the Rams making that comeback. Certainly don't see your Bears.
No, and the fact that the Bears are even on this list tells you how bad
If you remember,
underneath
like
it
earlier
is.
in the year, the Eagles went to Dallas, and Dallas smoked them 37-10. Now they'll play again game before last at the end of the year in Philly, which will probably mean the division. But we'll see. I mean, there's definitely way more separation in the NFC than there is in the AFC, which means, assuming things continue, especially with what we've seen on the field, I really, the AFC, there's some things that I think could still happen on the field that we're not quite sure of, but I think we're seeing what the NFC is all about. So
Yeah.
I want to end this playoff picture. Let's bounce back to the AFC with the top 4 and the 2 wild cards. Now, I know our preseason predictions, I think I had, who did I have? I had the Rams. Who did I have? I had the
I think you had the Rams.
The Rams and KC.
Yeah, I think so.
And who did you have?
I had the Saints beating the Pats.
Okay, the Saints beating the Pats. And I think I had the Rams winning against KC. So, all that aside, where we sit now, your call, personally, where do you think at this point in time from what we see, AFC, top 4 and then 2 wild cards, where do you think it'll end up?
Because
based
I
on
don't
what
have
we're
any
looking at?
really clear reason to change it. I'm going to stick with my pick.
Which is, well, no, I mean in the top, what do you predict that this
The how
playoff
it'll finish,
picture will
finish? Oh, okay, all right. I'll start with the NFC. I think
No, AFC. That's why I said AFC.
Oh, you're yelling at me. All yelling. All right, I'm gonna
Listen
stick,
to direction.
I'm gonna stick with the Pats and the
That's
Ravens.
why you're not working right now and we're doing this.
It's because I didn't listen to direction. All right, I'll stick with the Pats and the Ravens 1-2.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go with the Raiders at number 3. I am gonna take the. This one's tough. This is a tough one. I'm gonna take the Colts.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna take the Chiefs as a wild card.
Mm-hmm.
And I am going to take the Texans as a wild card.
Okay. I'm going to go the first 3 as we have it. Pats, Ravens, Chiefs, 1, 2, 3. I think Houston will get themselves back into the first place by end of the year. I think that, which leaves the Colts, the Bills, and the Raiders, huh? I'm actually going to say I love what Gruden's doing, but I'm going to say that the Colts will hang on for a wild card slot, and I'm going to say the Bills hold their other wild card slot, more so because
Bills with the number 2 spot?
1 or 2. I mean, I'm going to go Bills with the 1 wild card.
And the Colts. Okay.
Just because they do still
So
have
you don't think
New England, but they also still have the Jets and the Dolphins.
Okay, so you don't think the field change is just a little rearranging of the furniture?
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
All right.
All right. Now, NFC. You want to go first? I'll go first on this one.
Okay.
I think Seattle will take the number 1
You're
slot and
coming
will
around.
take the division for the NFC North or West. I just do. I think at 2 it'll end up the New Orleans Saints. I think 3 will be the Packers. I like the Vikings, and I definitely think they have something to offer. But I just you're talking about Aaron Rodgers versus Kirk Cousins, and I'm just going to go with Aaron Rodgers in that scenario. Oh man, so that leaves what I say: Saints at 2, Packers at 3, Cowboys or Eagles. Oh golly, that is just poo magoo for me. All right, let me take a quick look at the schedule. Yep. Patriots. I'm going to say the Eagles take the division. They find a way to get ahead of them and take the division. And then that will put the Niners absolutely in the wild card 1 slot, because I don't think they'll be far behind Seattle. In fact, they may have the same record, but Seattle won once, and I think they're going to win the second time. And then that will put more than likely the Vikings in that other slot. Yeah, I'm going to have to do that because I just don't think anyone in the hunt is worth a hoot.
I will take all of that, except I will take the Cowboys over the Eagles.
Okay. All right. Good stuff. We are at 59 seconds and counting, so we appreciate you. 59 minutes, sorry. Under an hour if I hurry up. We appreciate you listening. We'll see you as always
On the gridiron.
Have a beautiful day.